Hey everybody, welcome to class this morning. It is nice and cool in here today. We've been having a heat wave in Madison, which means it's been in the 90s, which I grew up in Houston, and I used to laugh at people when they would say, "Oh, it's 90 and that's a heat wave," because I was like, if it's not over 100, it's not a heat wave. But here I am talking about a heat wave when it was like 91 degrees, but it's warm and we don't have air conditioning in here. So we've been getting a nice breeze and it's kind of cooling off out here in Blue Mountains, and that's been really pleasant. So this morning, should we do some movement? I was thinking about some oblique stuff, and there was a nice dad joke in the chat there about the oblique point of view, which maybe that's a part of it as well. Um, so my first thing I want to do is kind of a funny little, surprisingly difficult exercise. Maybe we've done it before once or twice, but I don't think we've done it a ton. So you're going to start on your side with your legs out in line with your body. So everything's lined up with the back edge of your mat. So in side kicks, a lot of times we bring the feet forward. This one, you want to keep everything in one long line. And then it's great if your shoulder can tolerate this arm straight out as well, because we're creating sort of a narrow base to balance on. But if your shoulder feels funky and you can't really do that, it's fine to do this too. You just want to make sure you're not grabbing a lot with the shoulder and the arm. So then once you're in this position, like roll a little bit forward and back, and then see if you can feel, right, kind of that hip bone, which is really your thigh bone, but that kind of bony part of the top of the thigh, that you have that's the greater trochanter. You want your right and your left greater trochanter in one straight line down, perpendicular to the floor. Then you want to feel shoulder over shoulder. And then your knees a little soft, so they're not locking to hold you, and your shoulder relaxed. And you're kind of going for a feeling of it being just a little unstable. Like if a breeze blew by, it would sort of knock you over. So once you find all those things, maybe you feel just that little bit of instability. You're going to think of your ribs drawing in a little. And then very typically, the top hip will start to roll a little backwards and the shoulders will roll a little forward. So often, if you need to correct, it's that you need to bring the top hip a little forward and the ribs a little back. It's not always true, but might be something you need to do. And then we're going to take your arm straight up towards the ceiling. And then once that arm is up towards the ceiling, move your shoulder blade around a little bit. And then you want to set up so your shoulder blade feels just kind of wide on your back. It's not falling way back into your spine. It's just a little bit kind of lifted. Now I got to find my ribs again. I'm going to pull them in. So it's a little shaky already for me here. So I might just stay here. But also, if I want to test it out, I'm going to slowly start to bring my arm forward. And as I come forward, there's this feeling that I want to fall forward. And a lot of times what will happen is the hip will pull back, right, to counterbalance. No, don't do that. So keep the hip a little forward, keep the ribs in. That's how you get your obliques holding you. So you just want to kind of slowly move through it. Try to keep everything lined up. Maybe you go all the way down, maybe you don't. And take it down and up a few times. And it's slow and simple, which gives you the opportunity to check in with all those different things. Hip over hip, ribs connected, shoulder blade wide on your back, neck relaxed, knees soft. One more time. Now we're going to take your hand and place it on your rib cage, just to give you a little feedback there. And then we're going to think about bringing both legs off the floor. Like make it light so that just barely your pinky toe is touching the floor, like that sort of feeling. And then relax everything heavy. So it's not very visible, right? Doesn't need to be. So just that feeling of I'm about to lift both legs up. I'm not actually going to lift them. I'm just going to make it like just the side of my foot is barely touching the floor. And then back down. And then one more of those. Without punching into your knees, without locking your knees. Now, if you want, keep going and float both legs off the floor. And then back down. Yeah. And then you have to do all the same stuff. So both legs starting to float up, barely touching the floor. And then from that connection, maybe they come off the floor. Two more. Easy neck, soft knees, ribs in, hips lined up. And then relax everything. Maybe sometimes it makes your outer hip work a lot too. You might feel that. Okay, let's do the other side. So long line. Everything in a straight line here. I'm already super wobbly on this side. Soft knees, greater trochanter over greater trochanter. Ribs connected, head relaxed, neck relaxed. And a little bit, I feel this waist lifted off the floor too, so the underneath rib is connected as well. Okay, this side's harder for me. So if I face plant, don't judge me. So the arm is up, move the shoulder blade around a little bit. Feel it wide on your back, not pinned up into your spine. And I just kind of keep making the rounds, like, oh, did my hip fall backwards? Let me put that back in place. Oh, the ribs need to connect a little more. And then whenever you're ready, you might just stay here and just hang out and let your body adjust. Or you might want to start the arm moving a little forward. And like I said, this side's a little harder for me, so I'm going to take a couple super small. I'm not going to go very far. And just, feel when things start to tense up and not move past that. Each time's a little different. Last one. Okay, we're going to take this hand, put it on your rib cage, find everything again, and then we start with both legs like they're about to lift, but they don't actually lift. And sometimes to lift the legs, you just like push the knees really hard. Try not to lock your knees, but just like you're about to lift your legs. I get so wobbly on this side, so that's fine. It's like a nervous system response, right? I'm going to let it wobble a little and then relax everything. And try like that a couple times. Almost lifting, but not quite lifting. And release it. And then here's the big one. And then if you want to, from that sort of feeling, all the way up, just a little. If I go up high, my hip's just gonna fall back, right? So keep it kind of low. So you keep the straight line. And when the hip goes back, a lot of times the feet come forward, right? So we might get that thing where we think like, oh, I'm really doing it, but that's not really the obliques. That's other stuff, right? So hip stays forward, legs stay in line. One more. And then relax everything. Okay. So maybe you're like me. Maybe you have one side that's a lot harder than the other and you work with it a little differently. Or maybe like on one side the arm was hard and on the other side the legs were hard. This is the thing, right? Like we often are not perfectly symmetrical and perfectly balanced in the way we move. We tend to be a little more, one side has pain. We think, oh, this is the bad side because it has pain. But really, like, the obliques are just kind of about balancing both sides. There's always really something to work on both sides. So you just have to find what really works for you. So let's do the 100. Now that we have this nice side support, this nice oblique support. So we'll work into it. Knees bent, feet flat. Let's start with your arms up to the ceiling. Unless you find you really need neck support. And if you feel better with the head support and your hands behind your head, we're going to do a couple little crunches. So you can do it with your hands behind your head if that's better for you. So arms are reaching up a little bit. Shoulder blades are wide on your back. Now my obliques don't feel sore or like tense from that last exercise, but if I check in, they feel a little warm and a little awake, like I'm just kind of aware of them. And I'm going to go with that feeling. And then as you exhale, draw the ribs in through the front, just kind of keep some awareness, some kind of nice tone. Almost like, oh, I can feel the blood flowing through them, right? It's not really doing anything. It's just keeping an awareness there as I come up. And then back down. We'll take that a couple times. Inhale. And then exhale. Coming up. A little oblique support. Pelvis relaxed. Hips relaxed. Kind of easy neck. Your neck's not totally relaxed, but it doesn't have to grip. And then this time we'll take it up and work our way into the 100. So exhaling. And then feet could stay down. They could come up to tabletop. Or they could go out to straight legs, your choice. And then starting to pump. Inhale. And exhale. And maybe you have one hand behind your head supporting your neck, if that feels better. Or maybe both arms forward. Halfway through. So switch hands. If you have one hand behind your head, switch to the other side. Can you still feel that kind of warm side body awareness? Last one. And bring it all in. Rest your head. Rest your legs. And take a couple breaths on your back. And then however you like, find a way up to sitting. Okay, so oblique muscles, abdominal oblique muscles actually do a lot of things. So the side body work we did has to do with how they function to create lateral stability. So how you would balance on one leg. Often the obliques are working to help you stand on one leg, especially if everything is kind of straight ahead, and to work the other side. Sometimes we call it body halving. Sometimes we call it ipsilateral or homolateral movement pattern. But where one side of the body, just like both obliques come on, the internal and the external both come on to create some stability through there. They also work in that way when we do like side bending and you do work, maybe you have a weight, when you do that kind of side body work with weights, that's that homolateral, ipsilateral movement. Kind of halving the body that way. Now, what we just did in the 100, and I was asking you to feel the obliques, that's actually all the obliques working, right, left, internal, external, and they help create some flexion of the spine and working that way. So they can support on that to give me a more like three-dimensional feel in my body and the way I'm holding my spine, as opposed to just kind of the central part of the abdominals there. So obliques can be helpful with that. Then, of course, maybe the other thing that obliques do, which is rotate, right? Sometimes we think about working the obliques by doing a lot of twisting, and that's a contralateral way that they work. So the external obliques on one side and the internal obliques on the other side work. So the way they coordinate is how we get good movement through them. So a lot of times we think strength, 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 we should get stronger. Sometimes we don't need to get stronger, we just need to get a little more coordinated and use the strength that we have. So we should do a little twisting. We're going to do a little bit of all of those things here in this next exercise. So let's start with one knee bent and the other leg out straight. So if you're mirroring me, you can have your left knee bent and your right leg straight. And I don't have it the leg super pulled in. I have it actually kind of far away from me. I'm going to use my hands on my knee or the back of my leg, whatever's comfortable for you, to kind of pull with the arms and sit up a little taller without shifting my low ribs forward, right? So I want to still be connected through those side obliques like I did lying on my side. Keep the ribs in. I'm going to pull and just feel a little like deep length along the front of the spine, the side of the body. And then from there, I'm going to take a little rotation. So right hand goes to left knee and not far. I'm not trying to get a big stretch. I'm trying to work a little more, right? And I'm not going to work very much if I go to my end range of motion. So I'm going to keep it kind of small, but just try to keep everything lined up. So ribs are connected in, low belly's working a little bit. My pelvis isn't going to move, just kind of twisting around one way. And then back to center, little pull up feeling. And let's do that same way again. Ribs are drawing in. I can pull a little bit with the right hand on the left knee so that my knee doesn't fall open. And then I really think of the ribs drawing in and around and not the chest pushing forward or the shoulder pulling back. And then back to center. Okay, now I'm going to go to flexion again. So rounding the spine back, pulling the belly in, and then because I have one leg straight and the other knee bent in this next exercise, that I'm more in that kind of body halving place again. My obliques are going to work kind of in a more stabilizing manner on one side and a little more a working manner on the other side, but they're kind of separating again because my legs are doing different things. There's not really a thing you have to think about that's different, just kind of an awareness. Side body awareness. Rolling back. And so one way this expresses a little off is sometimes my hip on one side gets a little too high and I'm not really organized through my obliques. So if I keep the hips level, the ribs in, and really that image of the side body helping to stabilize on either side, really organize on either side. Got to keep that left hip dropping. That's going to help me come up through the center as well. Let's take that one again, curling your hips under. This hip keeps reaching forward. That waist stays really long. That really helps both sides organize. And should we do one more? And then take that leg forward. Bend the other knee. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing. Hands on the knee, not super far in. It's going to be really hard to sit tall if you pull your knee super far in. So let it be a little bit away from you. And if that means you hold, if your arms are a little shorter and you hold behind your thigh, that's fine. So that little bit of pressure, a little bit of lift onto your sits bones without sending your chest forward to keep all this organized. Get some of that length from the side body, from the deep center. And then again, if you're mirroring me, you have your right knee bent, you have your left hand to your knee, rotate. And then back to center. Find your length. Pelvis stays where it is. Rib cage moves around. Not letting your knee open. Back to center. Let's do one more on this side. I know it's tempting to try to stretch. Stretching is fine, but that's not what this is about, right? We want to go less. We want to go medium range of motion, maybe even small range of motion, so you feel what works. How to get those muscles to fire a little bit. And then back to center. Tipping back. Left side, right side engagement. As you start to tip back, you want to keep that right waist long, right sits bone forward. That helps my left side work better. Same thing here. As you press your thigh into your hands, you also kind of press that sits bone forward. And two more. Down and up one last time. Okay, so how about we do a little leg circle, which incorporates really a lot of stuff in the single leg circles. Anatomy is nice because it breaks things down into little distinct chunks. And it's also really good to remember that your body was not designed from an anatomical point of view, right? It was just designed. And then we chunked it all up so we could understand it better. But bodies actually move and they kind of do all these things. They like move through all these different ranges. So the leg circles has a little bit of all this stuff. So one knee comes in, the other leg stays straight. There's a little bit of that body halving, lateral oblique sort of feel here as the leg reaches up. But then we kind of mix it up because we're circling the leg. So we reach it across. That feels a little more like the twisting feeling. The obliques are firing a little more in that way. And then as I come down in center and open just a tiny bit, it's a little bit of both. It's a little bit kind of the lateral feeling. It's a little bit the cross feeling. So mainly feel your ribs in. Keep your pelvis steady. Imagine your side body helping you and working. Just get it all happening. Inhale across, exhale circle. One more like this. And then reversing. One more time. And then taking your first leg down, second leg up. Feel the sits bone reaching forward, so both sides of the waist are long, just like we did in rolling down and up. Reach your leg up. Ribs are connected. Pelvis stays still. And circling the leg across and down, little open and up. Side body connected. Front body connected. One more this way. And then reverse it. Inhale. Two more. And then resting everything down. Both legs down. Take a couple breaths here. And just notice how your body feels. Right side of the pelvis, left side of the pelvis, right side of the waist, left side of the waist, right side of the ribs, left side of the ribs. Just kind of that whole area of the body. And then however you like, work your way up to sitting. Andy, our production assistant, seems to have found a bug on the floor. So he might be sitting here helping out for a little while. Or he might go after the bug. So I'm going to pass off to Scott. We have a little bit of construction going on in the Dharma Center, so he's having to weave his way around to get to me.
But I got here, Andy got here. So let's employ some oblique strategies to continue this discussion of the obliques. So let's begin in standing and relax. Now, very often when we start to talk about the core, there's a sense, oh, I have to engage my core. So something really amazing and cool is going on right now. Have you flopped over? If not, your core is working. So quite often people engage their core, they just introduce a lot of tension. So as best you can, relax your feet, let your feet relax into the floor. Stand up tall. And no need to let your belly completely go loose, but nor is there a need to engage your core. Let's take a few breaths here. Now step your feet wide apart. Turn your left foot in and your right foot out. Exhale, bend. Inhale, straighten. So right now, Andy is trying to crawl up Colette like she's a cat tree. Just thought I could report the cat activities to you all. Now, once again, if your torso has not flopped over, your core is engaged. It's working right now. So next time your knee in the bent position, let's pause here. So now let's employ an oblique strategy that's going to require those oblique muscles to work a whole lot more. You aren't going to have to engage them. Slowly tip. Place your hand on your knee, hand on your hip. Now take a moment here to settle into a diagonal line. Spine, neck, and head, neither straight up and down, nor in the horizontal, in the diagonal. So now that supporting hand, gradually lightening it. Now your obliques are engaged whether you feel it or not. So let's increase that oblique engagement by increasing the length of the lever arm. Slowly reaching that arm out. And employing an oblique strategy, a couple breaths here. And then with the next inhale, come up and turn back toward the front. Now, if we were fully employing oblique strategy, we'd do something random here, but let's do the next side. Turn your right foot in, left foot out. Exhale, bend. Inhale, straighten. Up and down like that. And he's being a bit stir crazy on the just out of the camera view. Cat update part 2. The next time knee in the bent position, pause there. It's slowly tipping your hips, hand to knee, right hand on your hip, and settle into the diagonal. Spine neither horizontal nor vertical. And no need to engage your core, it's going to happen automatically. As you start to lighten your support hand, ultimately lifting it, whether you feel it or not, your obliques are working. Then if you want to work them a little bit deeper, lengthen the lever arm. And a few breaths here. Inhale up, turning back to the front, and then stepping your feet together. Let your arms hang. Let your feet relax. Go ahead and let your arches drop a bit. If that's what they want to do in relaxing, let it happen. A lot of the tension that people experience in their neck is tension that's held elsewhere in the body. Sometimes really well-intentioned tension. But let your feet relax. Let your core relax. And stand tall. Now invite awareness to your pelvic crest, these bones I'm pointing to. And ever so slightly lift your pelvic crest up to the ceiling to stand a little bit taller. All right. Now let's do some whole body movement, sun salutations. Exhale, knit your ribs. See if you can keep your ribs connected to your belly as you inhale, reach up. Exhale, fold. Inhale, gorilla, extend forward. Exhale, step back. Let's take a few breaths here in dog pose. Maybe you're asking, how does this work the obliques? Only obliquely, hardly at all. Let's take a couple more breaths here. And then come on down, all the way down into seated. And starting off with knees bent, feet flat upon the floor. And so this is something that Colette already covered, but to revisit the idea. Take your left foot forward. Then the bent leg, that side, lower ribs, connect to your belly. Keep that rib belly connection as you turn toward that bent leg, as you turn to your right. And then a few breaths here. And back in toward the middle. And back to the starting point. Second side, right foot forward. So now we're going to take bent leg side, which is your left side. Hook those left lower ribs to your belly. Keep that connection as you turn the other direction. And a few more breaths here. And back in toward the middle. First side again. So sometimes think about a sash, like the marching band, the person at the very front, typically with baton in hand. They're going to wear that sash. So we're going to use a muscle sash connecting your right lower ribs diagonally across to your left pelvic crest. So keep that dynamic connection as you turn to your right. So I know a lot of lefts and rights. The main thing here is to turn from your neck and your upper back and not from your lower back. Then you're going to get more mobility, more benefit between the shoulder blades. Now to facilitate freeing upper back, a few deep breaths. And then back in toward the middle. Switch out legs. Sometimes the sash image doesn't work so well. Maybe you've worn a courier bag. So connecting left lower ribs diagonally down like the strap of your courier bag to the right pelvic crest. So keeping that dynamic connection diagonally across as you turn to your left. Now, those of you who may be working with bone density, whether osteopenia or osteoporosis, you can do little twists. You just don't want to jam really hard into it. So rather than turning maybe 30 or 40 or even 90 degrees, maybe more like 5 to 10 degrees. But you can still create a little bit more movement between your shoulder blades, even if you twist just a tiny bit. And then back in toward the middle. and then onto your back. So knees bent, feet flat upon the floor. Then interlacing your hands. Bring your hands behind your head. And moving toward a mini crunch. So first lift your head, use your arms to do so. That keeps your neck relaxed. And then with the next out breath, lift your shoulders up. And we'll take a few breaths here. So what muscles make this movement? Well, it's complicated. It's like a lot of people's relationship status on Facebook, where they just say, it's complicated. So rectus abdominis is working to some degree. Obliques are working to some degree. Probably transverse abdominis is working to some degree. So let's take a few more breaths here in mini crunch. And then slowly, slowly lower down. So now we're going to work with mini crunch, lightly engaging the obliques just a little bit more. It's going to be a subtle movement. So starting from mini crunch, using your arms to lift your head up, using your abominable abdominals to lift your shoulders up. So now your left shoulder blade. Lift your left shoulder blade a little higher up. See how there's a little rotation occurs? Holding, holding, holding. Back to normal, usual mini crunch. Now take your right shoulder blade, lift your right shoulder blade a little bit up. Holding, holding, holding. Back to normal, usual mini crunch. And come on down. All right, when you did that, did you tense your neck up? Really common. When we go to engage the obliques, it's not uncommon. The neck muscles reflexively, habitually tense up. So you do the same thing again, this time with a cognizance of keep your neck muscles out of it. Begin with normal, usual mini crunch. That means that both shoulders are lifted up. Then let your head continue to rest heavily into your hands. As you lift your left shoulder up, couple breaths here. Back down. Right shoulder up. Couple breaths. Back down. And release. All right, how's that in your neck? Okay. The other place that we tend to overwork when we're bypassing the obliques are those hip flexors. So if you're not sure what I mean, I'm poking and prodding at my own hip flexors, and practice letting those muscles relax best you can. Then keeping those hip flexor muscles as best you can soft and relaxed as you move into a mini crunch. Now, my own body, this is a lot harder. I don't tend to tense my neck up much when I do this, but I sure do tense up my hip flexors. And see if you can keep your hip flexors relaxed as you lift your left shoulder up. So that means the left external oblique is working in tandem with right internal oblique. Holding, holding, relax your hip flexors. Holding, back to the center. Now engaging right external oblique, left internal oblique to lift your right shoulder up. Wow, I just felt my left hip flexor grab, relax, relax. Back toward the middle. And then come on down. Okay, let's take a few breaths here. So as was mentioned in the chat a little bit earlier, some pretty deep work, isn't it? So now let's go to hands and knees. And from hands and knees to downward dog. Now in actuality, downward dog does involve obliques, but it's not a primary activity or engagement. A few more breaths here. And then come on down to your knees and onto your side. So I'm going to be mirror image of you all. So left arm on the floor. See how I have my forearm facing straight ahead? And then just like Colette worked with you all a little bit earlier, having your feet in line. This right hand forward in front. And just like you worked on right at the outset, align your body. Now what we're working toward here is a side plank, but those are really hard, particularly if you keep that whole body alignment. So rather than the intention to lift your hip up, slightly lighten that hip, maybe by 5 pounds or 10 pounds or 20 pounds, holding, 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 and coming down. Easy or hard? I find that hard. Maybe you find it easy. So body aligned. See if you can keep that whole body alignment as you maybe lighten your hip, as you maybe lift your hip. Holding, 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 and come on down. Side plank. Let's do it on the other side. So body in line, legs, hip, torso, neck, and head, forearm on the floor. Already in my body, this feels apples and oranges from the first side. So see if you can keep that alignment as you maybe lighten that hip by a few pounds, by a lot of pounds, maybe even lift it up. 5, 4, steady breathing. 3, 2, 1, and come on down. Perfectly okay to use this arm to help. Let's try it one more time. So lightening, perhaps leading toward lifting. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and come on down. And then moving on to your back. So knees bent, heels drawn in comfortably close. Then use your abdominal muscles to lightly press your lower back into the floor. And you feel how your pelvis then tips backwards. It's called a posterior tilt. See if you can maintain that posterior tilt as you then lift your pelvis up, 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 up. And we'll hold here for a few breaths. It's kind of like dog pose. Really, all the abdominal muscles are involved. Internal obliques, external obliques, transverse abdominis, and rectus abdominis. And then slowly come on down. But truth in advertising, obliques aren't doing a huge amount. They're not primary. So now let's take a variation to a little more directly work those obliques. So start with your posterior pelvic tilt. Maintain that posterior tilt as you lift your hips up. And then keeping your hips steady and stable. Not one hip dropping down, not tipping side to side. See if you can keep your hips steady and stable as you slowly lift your right heel, then the forefoot, and take that right leg up to the ceiling. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bring that foot down and then lower down. So the leg you lifted up, your right leg, did you feel how that hip tends to drop? It's really common. Let's try the other side. So posterior pelvic tilt, lift your hips up. Now with the cognizance that for majority of people, it's the left hip tends to drop down. So even keep the left hip at the height of the right. As you first lift your left heel, then the forefoot, and take that leg up. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Lower that leg down. Now as you come down, see if you can feel segment by segment. It's almost like you're a string of pearls setting down pearl by pearl, setting down vertebra by vertebra. All right, so let's take a few minutes here to relax. So whatever is comfortable for you, maybe it's straightening your legs out. For me, it's to lean my legs into each other so I can let my leg muscles rest. And then the same comfort invitation with your arms, wherever they're comfortable, whether on your belly or at your side. And if you feel comfortable doing so, close your eyes. So whatever that you are resting upon, aware of what that surface feels like. For me, the floor, even this mat, feels cool, which is a nice contrast to the heat of this room. And the support of this surface, whether it's the floor or maybe you got up on a sofa or a bed, fully release into the surface that you're resting upon. The weight of your feet and your head. Your pelvic bones. And your shoulders. So with this sense of the back of your body, maintaining that sense of back body, if you closed your eyes, now open your eyes. Explore the experience of seeing from your back rather than seeing from your front. And then as you feel ready, sit up. Alrighty. Obliques, any comments, any questions? Looks kind of quiet out there. So thanks so much for joining us on this weekend day. Maybe you're watching this as a recording. So have a great weekend, day, week, whatever's ahead of you. Thanks for joining us.